And I'm now joined by Tom Stewart. Thank you very much for joining us today, Tom. How are you doing?
I'm very good, thank you, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Great stuff. No, our pleasure. Thanks for coming on. Brilliant. So, Tom, if you could just start by giving us a quick outline of your role at the club.
Yep, so I'm the club's head of communications. I've been with Cambridge United since May 2015, just after the Manchester United game. So I missed all that hoopla, which was slightly fortunate from working inside the club ahead. That was quite eventful. My role essentially is to produce the communications for all the club's online channels, so the club website, the club social media channels, the match programme, which this year, obviously with COVID, and just with the way programmes are going these days, is moved to an online digital format. It's an interactive programme whereby we can include the usual articles that you'd find in a programme, such as player interviews and columns from notable people around the club, but we also have the ability to put videos in there, so we can put highlights from previous games, interviews with players if we wanted to do so. So it's quite interactive, and that's quite a fun part of the role to do. Other parts of my role, I'm also the press officer, so any sort of media relations, setting up press conferences pre and post match, any interview requests that the club gets sort of come to me, be that for a player, for the chief executive, the MAFA, for the head coach, Mark, for anyone that run the club. So that's part of my role really. And then sort of within that as well as a bit of marketing support across the club in commercial areas such as yourself occasionally, really. The commercial area with Louis Hrebeniak, the commercial in terms of any relationship with sort of club sponsors. A bit of free play with times when we've got hospitality, a bit of promotion, hospitality areas to try and get fans to pick up those. So it's a bit of a touch point with all areas of the club, which is good fun.
Oh, fantastic. So real wide-ranging roles there. And I think that's really interesting because obviously for most people, the only insight they get into the club really is obviously seeing what goes on Twitter and seeing the interviews with obviously with the first team manager, and obviously that's you behind the camera, so doing the interview. So that's really interesting to sort of for the guys watching this to see who it is that makes it all happen, really.
Yeah, it's they're the fun bits. I say that they're the fun bits when you win games. When you've lost it when you've got the manager, it's not as fun. You don't quite get that same size when you get to share that moment with the manager, like you say, you do the post-match interviews, or I've got to admit that the favourite part of the role is doing the Twitter during games when you're winning, because within reason you've still got a completely captive audience that will just laugh at anything you say, which is brilliant. So yeah, that's certainly a good part of the job, but it is just a part of the job, unfortunately. I wish it was like that 24/7. Once a week, and you basically build up to that point, and the rest of it is putting the pieces in place to keep the club ticking over from a public play perspective.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Yeah, no, I bet that isn't quite as much fun when we've gone down to one of the heavier defeats like we have done in previous seasons. Been a bit lucky this season, but
I can tell you a funny story though if you want one, Louis.
Go on, I'd love one.
I've only ever had one game where I'm sat in the middle of the match and I'm sat there, I don't know what to tweet anymore. And that was unfortunately the game was at Luton, we lost 7-0, and we were about 4-0 down the first half. And I genuinely got to a point in the second half whereby every time I looked at the board, they basically scored it. I sat there thinking, I have no idea what to tweet now, because thankfully in 5 years I've only picked one of those moments. The rest of it I've got too much to say, unfortunately.
Oh no, I hope everyone has forgotten about that. No, he's brought that one up. No, that never happened. That was a friend.
Yeah. Thankfully, happier times are taking place now. So I've not had to do that since. And fingers crossed I won't have to going forward either.
Brilliant. It must be really hard when you can't think of what to tweet because everything is just going so terribly. But I guess it's the other way where you can't get enough out when things are going that well as well.
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Funny enough, and this just doesn't make me sound very professional in any way, shape, or form. But the other one is when you're in a game and it's brilliant, and you're obviously there as a fan, and you want the club to do well, and then you suddenly we score. Harrison Dunk, I'll give you an example. Harrison Dunk scored a last-minute winner up at Chesterfield, and it was quite an important game. It was Joe Dunn's first interim game in charge. He'd been for a really bad spell, blah, 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 blah. Harrison scores literally in the 95th minute at Chesterfield. And, the whole press box, even Doug Shulman, who's doing the co-commentary, radio commentary, he's lost control. And then you think, oh no, I bet actually tell people about that. Just scored, rather than just being. But yeah, it is when you're winning, you have that responsibility. You can't lie, it's brilliant fun.
That's fantastic. That's brilliant. Of course, remembering to put it out on the channels that we've scored. That's fantastic.
most of the time it was a quick fist bump, a bit of a shout, and then okay, I better do my job now.
Brilliant. I think my celebration for the dugout lasts about 5 minutes, so I can never do your job. Brilliant. That's fantastic. So just moving onto just a little bit about your journey, really. How did you end up obviously doing press officer, head of communications at Cambridge? And was it something you always wanted to do, or was it something you maybe fell into, or how did you get in?
Sort of fell into the sports journalism path, if you like. It was when I was sort of in sixth form. I was always erring towards towards doing a history course, and for whatever reason, decided at the last minute that wasn't sort of for me, and genuinely spotted sports journalism as an option on the sort of the UCAS options that we've got when you're looking at that stage of life. But really enjoy sport. I'm not good enough to play, so I wanted to give it a go. I went and did a 3-year sports journalism course at university. I chosen Huddersfield because at the time, actually one of the tutorial days, the tutor there was brilliant and really highlighted the importance of work experience. And it's something now that even when I speak to people that want to get into sports journalism, want to get into a role like mine, the first thing I'd say is get yourself some good experience, because there's nothing that can really replicate learning in the industry and learning on the sort of not on the job, but that's where you can best learning skills. So that was why I chose Huddersfield. The tutor was a big advocate of work experience. In my third year at university, I did a year's placement at Huddersfield Giants Rugby League.
Oh wow!
Threw myself into that. Really enjoyed it. My role there was basically contribute towards writing for the match programme and basically doing a couple of clubs coverage, particularly on the match days. I'd go in there, work 1 day a week, 2 days a week, just to create some content for their website as well, and do sort of interviews with the players. So basically all the fun stuff that I mentioned before, but none of the responsibility. So that was good. Really threw myself into that for the year. Got to know the media manager / marketing manager at the time there really well, and he gave me a really good reference at the end of it. And then that's where the sort of a little bit of luck fell into place. A very similar role came up at another rugby league club. Excuse me. Just as I was finishing university and just as I finished that placement, so I chucked my CV in there. Had a really good reference from someone already working in the industry, and that's where a little bit of luck comes into it. That you just right place, right time. And that's probably the key thing about having the work experience, was that I had the CV and the experience to back it up to show that I was capable of doing the job. So I went to Hull FC, which is a rugby league club, by the way. Everyone down south thinks they're a football club, but they're not. Hull FC is a rugby league club. I was in Hull for a year, really enjoyed that job. And then the job at Cambridge came up. Actually, I'm from around Cambridge way, and I'd been to support Cambridge prior to going to university. Had a couple of season tickets for a few seasons before going to university. So I put my CV in here, and thankfully it paid off, and here I am 6 years later.
Fantastic. What an absolute story that is. Brilliant journey. Now, I'm going to put up one thing though. You said that you can't play. Now, you and I both know that's not a winning captain right here, so I'll just let him tell the quick story about that one. He still does play a little bit, our good friend Tom.
I play on a Sunday morning at a very, very poor level. I'm a poor man's Paul Digby at best. But yeah, I play a little, but honestly, mate, at no standard whatsoever.
What was the cup you lifted just before?
It was a Suffolk Sunday Shield.
Unbelievable! It's a proper trophy, that is.
I think I'm not even sure. By the way, it's the best ranked Sunday Cup. I actually think it's this like the second ranked Sunday Cup. So it's not even like one FA Cup. I think you've got like basically the Sunday League mornings, like or the Suffolk's League Cup essentially. That's basically what it is.
Hey, I mean, I haven't won a trophy you've won a trophy recently.
It was a trophy. It was a trophy, and it was an excuse to go out and have a few drinks, so it's fine. It was good enough.
It's all silverware, it all counts. Just ask Mourinho. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Fantastic. So obviously that's brilliant, and a real good message there, obviously, for everyone that might be looking to get into perhaps the sports journalism pathway, and obviously with a real big message about work experience there as well, which I think is really fantastic, and sort of echoes some of the messages in some other interviews we've done as well about hard work and putting yourself in situations where you're likely to maybe progress.
It's an interesting one. I obviously, you can imagine, get a lot of emails from a lot of young lads, particularly who are really keen to work in football, as is everyone. The really key thing about the work experience thing I'd say is that I went to university and essentially learned my trade, if you like. You get taught the skills that you need, but the key thing about the work experience is find a work, and I did it with rugby league, and to be honest with you, it wasn't even something I'd chosen. That's where the tutor was brilliant for me. He sort of said, "No, do this work experience," because the quality of the work experience at the rugby league club was better than ones that were being offered to, well, that were available at football clubs, because I was able to do more in the role. To look for work experience potentially in a more niche area, give you a better quality of learning what you'll need in your skills than potentially one that you think you want. So as I say, I get so many emails from young lads that want to work in football, and that's sort of not the point. Everyone wants to work in football, obviously, because it's football, but what you actually need is the right skill set at the right time to be able to do it. So if that means going to work in rowing, in indoor bowls, and I say that as I'm sure there are huge fanatics of indoor bowls and rowing, but obviously there are a large number of people that are like that for football. But if the quality of work experience in those areas are better, then 100% take up those opportunities. Honestly, the best option is to just never say no anyway. Just say yes to pretty much everything you can, and then you'll pick up as many things in the way as possible. So the key is to basically learn your skills, and then when you've got those skills, say yes to as much as possible, so that you become more rounded, and you get to try out those skills in different areas, and you pick up more skills along the way, and then you just need that little bit of luck, which to be fair I had.
No, that's absolutely fantastic, and so interesting. I think for everyone to hear that as well. Obviously coming from yourself, so no, that's brilliant. I'm sure that'll be great interest to all of our players. I wanted to ask another question about you, if that's all right.
Yep.
Favourite moment working for Cambridge United FC, but of course maybe one of the other clubs as well, perhaps rugby clubs. One that stands out. I know there's been
I've sort of got two favourite moments. My favourite experience was when we played Leeds in the FA Cup, because it was a nightmare, because it was just so busy, and some people might be aware of the press area at Cambridge United, and others won't be. It's not brilliant. Let's be honest. It's not. I mean, we're not talking the standard of Wembley. It's got a desk. It's got an indoor area, and at the minute we've not even got that because of COVID, and we've got about 7 plugs. So it's not magnificent. So then when you get someone like Leeds and the world's football, the nation's best football journalists want to come and watch it because it's quite a good FA Cup time. It's like the last one of that particular weekend's schedule of fixtures. That presented quite a challenge, but it was quite fun. It was a good challenge. Like, we had to basically squeeze a lot of journalists into quite a small and let's be brutally honest, not very pretty area. That was good. And then we had chucking that we had BT Sports here doing it live, so it was quite a good experience. So I'd say that's my favourite experience in the role, if you like, just as a bit of a learning from my perspective. But it's football, isn't it? So your favourite moment's got to be like football related. Like, so I mentioned the dunk one earlier. That was just one where you just when you just lost your head, and like, oh, actually no, I'm meant to be here working. That was quite a good one. And the other one was, to be fair, Mark Bonds' like interim phase. It's very difficult to choose between Colchester and Bradford, between those late fight backs. But I'd probably choose the Colchester one. Bonds' first interim game in charge again, and literally in the last 5 minutes we're 1-0 down, and then all of a sudden we've won 2-1, and the place is going mad. Like, and then obviously I'm fortunate. There's a few of us fortunate enough to work in the club where you don't just get to experience that bit that everyone gets to experience in the ground, but you then get to go into the tunnel, and like, it's just brilliant. So that feeling's addictive, and that one is probably the one where I go. And it's so weird, because any other football fan other than Cambridge United fan, it was such a mundane game. Middle of February, nothing really riding on it, but it was just really fun to be a part of.
Brilliant. I think two fantastic answers. The first one obviously is really interesting to hear about the press room and that. But for me, I completely agree. I think, again, I spoke to a couple of other people recently, and this theme sort of comes out that obviously all of us really fortunate to be involved in football and able to obviously continue to go to games in the circumstances. But that there's nothing can replace that feeling, is there? That you through like a late goal or something, even as his work at the club.
Yeah, that feeling, by the way, is enhanced when you genuinely go through the ups and downs, because the rest of your week depends on how the previous results gone, in terms of how you can build up to the next game if you've come back a defeat or whatever. Because your whole week revolves around that 90 minutes, and then to have that basically an emotional roller coaster in that particular game where you're thinking you're going to lose 1-0, and then all of a sudden you won 2-1 out of nowhere. It's just, you can't. That isn't and then you get to be a part of it all after, and you that is an addictive feeling that I don't think many. By the way, I hope people do experience that in other jobs, because the world would be a really brilliant place. But I can't imagine that there are many other roles where, other than football or other than sport generally, that it just creates that feeling that you just love to be a part of it.
Absolutely, yeah, no, I completely agree. It's fascinating. I've got to ask you, so this was a question that was sent in actually. So the funniest or most interesting coach, or perhaps the hardest coach you've had to interview? That's a really difficult question. You can say a player as well if you ever say a player. So maybe the best interview and perhaps the most difficult.
I think it's quite hard to name someone. None of the coaches that I've worked with here have been difficult to interview or work with. But the other thing is, I think part of being a coach or being the manager or being the person in charge, you've got to communicate pretty well anyway. So none of them were particularly hard or difficult to interview because they all obviously speak. That's part of the skill set, right? They have the ability to communicate. So I wouldn't say they're difficult. I won't name any names. The people that are difficult to speak to are players that don't like doing interviews. That either for one reason or another don't feel comfortable in front of a camera or don't feel comfortable speaking to a microphone. And by the way, that's part of my role, is to sort of try and help them along to do that a little bit. But there are people, and this isn't just players. There's some people naturally that don't particularly speak well, and particularly under pressure when you've got a microphone standing in front of your face. And there are some players, and I won't name any names because it's not fair to do it.
Of course,
just do that. They just freeze. Or the flip side of it, they just don't like. I mean, they don't like doing it. They are deliberately awkward to interview because they don't like doing it and they just want to get it done with. So they make it short as possible. So I won't. It would be completely out of order for me to sort of go. Yeah, he was rubbish. he was hopeless. But
how about a best one? Was there one that you stand out? He's great to interview.
Jabo Ibiro is always quite funny. I mean, sometimes he'd be doing an interview and the press standing around would just sort of look at each other and go, is he just, he'd go off on a few funny tangents at times, but he was funny.
Brilliant. And
Bonds, I think the cat's out of the bag now for a lot, but Bonds speaks really well, doesn't he? So he's always good to interview because it makes my role really easy, or it makes the interviewer's job really easy because you just know Bonds is going to give you a good answer. But going back to Jabo is probably one of the funniest to speak to.
Jabo, brilliant. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think on the point about obviously Mark Bond, I think that's really interesting because obviously for those of us that were fortunate enough to work with him at the club, obviously yourself, myself, before he came in, I think a lot of people didn't realise perhaps how eloquent and how outgoing he is, and perhaps his understanding of the game is as good as it is. And I suppose obviously having that personal relationship, but knowing him from before, would you say that helps when it now comes to him being the first team manager and you be able to interview him, or would you say it doesn't make much difference?
It helps. It certainly helps. I'm not sure it's so much that he had that personal relationship with him, because he speaks well. He speaks as well to me as he speaks to a journalist that he's just met, the freelance Sun journalist that he speaks to up at Carlisle or Morecambe. He speaks as well to them as he speaks to me. He's just naturally a very good talker, and he's obviously concentrated on developing his communication skills to be able to do that. So I'd just say it's really one of his natural skill sets to be able to do that, as opposed to my interview technique, mate, which is bang average.
If yours is bang average, how bad is mine? Shambles.
No, this is superb. I feel like I'm a Michael Parkinson there. This is brilliant.
I want to put that on my wall. I'm going to get that framed. So just on the subject of best friends then, would you say there is the best piece of content you've ever done? I know there's been some great videos go out there, but is there something that sticks in your mind you've gone, wow, that was unbelievable about done myself?
I don't know. It's how you define best.
Like, the one you enjoyed the most, or the one
I enjoyed the most, without question. And I've got to give credit to Simon Lancaster, who's the club photographer as well. We went to Accrington Stanley away, and we were driving there, and we get to about Huddersfield, which is about an hour, well, not even that, it's about 40 minutes from Accrington, and the rain just comes down. It's a monsoon, and straight away we're thinking, oh no, this game is going to be off. We've already driven basically 3 hours, and we're about half an hour away. It's going to be off. Lo and behold, literally, we get 15 minutes away from the ground. We get a call, game's off, waterlogged pitch. We get there. And by the way, this game it was never on. It's a swimming pool. It's under 3 inches of water. So I don't think it'd have been on at 6 o'clock that morning. So we're like, oh, that's gutting. And then we just, I don't know why, it just popped into our head. We decided that at the point in which the teams would usually get announced, which is an hour before before kickoff, we'll put a team lineup out that's water related or fish related or basically waterlog related. So we did a team of Cambridge United players with the Cambridge United players as like fish puns and water based puns, like sea lion leg and like fluke berry and Sean Derry's the manager at the time, so he became prawn derry, and our fans lost their heads. It was a bit of a 50-50 split between those that found it as amusing as me and Lank did, and those that was just absolutely outraged that we'd come up with something so bad. It was horrendous, like Gil Norris, things like that. It was so bad. It was so bad. It was good, and mate, the engagement was unbelievable because it was split between people that actually found it quite funny because it was just really average, and those that were just utterly incredulous at how cheesy it was. And me and Lank found that absolutely hilarious for the 3 hours on the way home. So that's probably my favourite because it actually did. The engagement numbers were quite good on it.
Brilliant.
Because people found it so offensive. But yeah, it was good. It was good because it was just so bad.
That's amazing, and that's not what I was expecting you to say at all. But I actually remember this, and I was one of the people that found it amazingly funny. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah, it was so bad. It was so bad. Aaron Mason, who was the Cambridge News reporter at the time, he did an article about it. It was like it was basically along the lines of like the piece of content that split Cambridge United, split the Cambridge United fan base down the middle, and I thought it was brilliant. Honestly, I'm still so proud of it.
That's amazing. I think everyone can see that's brilliant. That's unbelievable. Yeah, that's fantastic. There's been some great stuff. I think that does top the line. That's brilliant. So just on that then, obviously being in a position of such great power comes with such great responsibility. What's it like running social media accounts with so many thousands of followers? How does that feel?
Yeah, it's obviously it's not so much how it feels a lot better when, again, going back to when you run a game and all those people think Cambridge United are the best thing since sliced bread. It's brilliant. When you've not, it's not as nice. I'm the person that's got to read every comment. So it's just part of the job. Like as I said earlier, that doing particularly the match updates and doing the sort of social media around the match day is my favourite part of the job because it's the bit where I guess going back to the favourite games. The buzz is twofold for me because I get to experience that moment myself in the game, and then I also get to experience everyone else's elation when, for whatever reason, if they're at the ground or not, they pick up the phone and they decide that they want to share their elation with the world on social media. So I sort of get to share that elation twice, and I get to share it with everyone. So that's you can't help but not enjoy that. It's just great fun, isn't it?
That's brilliant. And obviously, you're well known for your fantastic responses to people's comments on Twitter as well. There's always some good ones out there. Do you ever read comments and go, "Oh, that's hilarious," and feel you have to go back with something, or is it something that just happens in the moment, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think you got to be careful sometimes, haven't you? I think you just have to judge the temperature of like how recent results have gone. If I put this, is it unnecessarily inciting anger from supporters, or it's a bit of a judge of will most of our fan base find this amusing or won't they? And is it? I'd never ever, or the club should never ever put something out that deliberately annoys our supporters, because it's the complete opposite of what the channel's there to do. You're there to engage with your own fan base. So it's just a bit of a judge of temperature whether they're responding to the right people at the right time and sort of having your finger on the pulse of what the mood of the fan base, the fan base generally is like, and whether they respond to it positively or whether you're just picking a fight, which isn't something you should never ever do. So it's just a bit of a judge of temperature, mate, and then you go from there. But I would say, and this isn't just for Cambridge United, this is for, and it's important in my role that you're looking at sort of what other clubs are doing as well, most clubs do that sort of response to supporters, because that's part of engaging with the fans anyway. And I would say the best ones are the ones that know when their moments are to go, there's an opportunity there, and then there are others who either don't see that opportunity and therefore don't respond, or just completely misjudge it and get it completely wrong, and then they make headlines, which is what you don't want to do.
That's brilliant. Yeah, and just on that, I've always wanted to ask. Obviously, it goes trending on Twitter quite often. A bit of banter between clubs, social media accounts. I think that some of the German clubs are very hot on taking a mickey out of each other.
I'm glad the German clubs, and like Roma, another one, unbelievable. Like that, in all fairness, we are basically I don't want to call it philosophy, because basically I'm just typing random stuff onto a Twitter account, putting cool gifs up. But I no question, I am inspired a little bit by the likes of Roma and the Bayern Munich, like English accounts, because they just do it so well. Like they never miss an opportunity. Like because probably the resource and the level where we're at, we'll spot a good opportunity every now and then, but we won't spot everyone. Whereas they have teams of people, I have no doubt, waiting for the next opportunity just to arise. So, and they're pretty good at it.
That's brilliant, fantastic. I think, again, it's all part of the magic of football. Almost, to use that cliche, isn't it? It's all part of the fun of it, and all part of the the enjoyment and the moment.
You're right. I think sometimes, I think you almost want to communicate to supporters. I think it's important that supporters feel that their club completely understand what supporting their club is about. So I think and it sounds ridiculous, but I think what the club tweets from its own Twitter account should reflect what a fan, or the majority of the fans, feel about an issue or something's happening in the game, or at any given moment. I think we just want to be a representative of our fan base and the club generally, and obviously what the club stands for. So I'm just the person basically pressing the published button on it, mate. But I'm just in that fortunate position, really.
Fantastic. No, that's brilliant. And I think this has been such a great insight, and I really appreciate it. I've just got a couple more questions, if that's okay.
Yeah, mate, fine.
The first one, basically, who comes up with the goal gifts? Is that you, and how does that work? Because I'm sure a lot of people will be wondering, having seen it on Sky Sports and that.
I've got good. I should generally give credit anyway to. So particularly this season, we've got a match day team, if you like, who, by the way, do more work than just on match day. They do a lot of work and offer the club immense value. So Ollie Kane, who is basically the club's videographer, Ben Phillips, Simon Lancaster, both photographers. Ben also helps out with a lot of the iFollow content, and obviously Dave Vant, which is the face of it all, if you like, as the presenter. The goal gifts was something that basically Ollie had sort of suggested last season that we do for the first time, and we basically every season we do a sort of pre-season media day where things like the team photos get taken and the players get their head and shoulder pics taken. And last year we sort of just chucked in, it was a bit scrambled, but we chucked in the goal gifts. This season we had, because of iFollow and obviously the fact that we knew fans weren't going to be in, unfortunately, for quite a lot of the season. At the time we thought it would be for a small portion of the season, but it's turned out to be quite a long time. We decided to make the media day quite iFollow based, where we could get a lot of content done on stock, including the goal gifts. So it was properly planned out. The players knew they were going to have the goal gifts done. Obviously, a lot of them were here last season, or quite a few of them were here from last season. So having done it once and seeing their goal gift last year, which were good but weren't amazing, had come up. I mean, Luke Cannon's a great example with he's doing Happy Gilmore. He's probably choreographed a goal gift. I would say 80% of the players had choreographed their own goal gifts, and then the other 20% you just need to give a little. Oh, we haven't got one of these. Just give it one of them, or give it you need a bit of encouragement. But mate, the players love it. Like they most of them knew what they were going to do. There wasn't much encouragement required.
Who would you say, was it Hannah? Would you say would be the one with the most pre-planned one, or who was himself a little bit?
Oh mate, Hannah had 3 people involved. So Hannah had Joe Ironside and Liam Anir involved, and they were practicing it in the corridor as they were queuing in to do it. Joe's was quite well choreographed as well. This is a quite funny story. Liam Anir had basically planned, and obviously, Liam Anir was number 8, Wes Houlihan's number 14. Liam Anir had planned to do like the goal swing and then that, which he did. We'd lined them up in number order, so they come Dimmy's first, and then Kyle, and then Jack. Wes comes in about 10, 15 minutes later to do his. Liam still stood in the room. Wes does the exact same celebration. And Liam goes over to him and says, "Oh, mate, that's a nightmare. I've just done that one." Like that. And Wes goes, "Don't worry about it. No one's going to see yours. You ain't going to score any goals, mate." So I thought that was quite amusing. Wes backed himself to score a few more than Liam. So I genuinely do hope we do see Liam's now, just so he can go. There you go. We did see
a bit back to Wesy, yeah, absolutely. No, fantastic. Yeah, I did wonder what obviously what a few of the boys ones. Obviously, we saw Idris's one. Obviously, went back on his live, and that was a great gift.
Mate, that was random, really random. That was we had a little bit too much time on our hands to do it, so we had a bit too much thinking time, and it was just like, yeah. We had a bit of everything. He was eating, he was drinking, he was on his phone. It was just it was random.
Random, brilliant. Yeah, if anyone's got the opportunity, got a bit of spare time in the lockdown, go to our Twitter and check that out. Give you a shout for some more followers there as well, Stu. So. Fantastic. So brilliant. Like I said, really appreciate your time today. Last question for you, and it sort of goes back to something you spoke about at the start. If you had one piece of advice you could give to obviously the people, I know you've given a bit at the beginning, but just to sort of echo that, if that would be okay. One piece of advice to someone maybe looking to get involved in the industry, and like you said earlier, how would you recommend them getting involved?
I would recommend they do some sort of course, whether it's at college. I personally would recommend they go to university and do a sports journalism course or a journalism course or a media studies course of some sort, where you can learn your skill set. I would say, I think I would advise the courses you look for are the ones that offer a bit of a broad skill set, whether it's writing, video production, audio, radio production, anything like that, where you can learn the different sort of types of news platforms and what you need to do to be able to deliver on those. So essentially go and learn your skill set on some sort of course, and then not as a sort of side project, but that basically goes alongside that, accompanies that, is say yes to as much work experience as you possibly can. The thing with work experience, I would say, and this is a bit of advice that I would give generally, even the people that email me now asking for work experience, don't just, I will get like, honestly, double figures people a week saying, "I love football, I want to work in football, have Cambridge United got any opportunities?" Don't do that. Look at Cambridge United's online accounts maybe, or look at football clubs, or whatever club you want to get into. Look at potentially their online platforms, or where and how they deliver their news to their supporters, and see if you can find any gaps, like find areas where you can offer values. Go, right, okay, they do that brilliantly, and that looks really fun, but why don't they do that? Because at Cambridge United, the honest answer is because the resource isn't there to be able to do a lot more on top of what we do already. We're always looking to build, of course, because you never want to stand still. And to be fair, this season with iFollow, I would say we've made really good strides with our digital strategy, but there are still areas where we can improve because there always are. So find those areas, then get in contact with the club and go, "I've noticed that you've done this. I noticed you've done that. Can I ask why you don't do that? And would it be possible if it's a resource thing, I'd be willing to do it. This is who I am. I've studied this course. I've done it. Here's an example of my work somewhere else, so that I can basically trust that they're going to deliver a high quality. But find an area of value that you can offer to these places, and then approach them for experience by essentially going, "Here's where I'm going to add value to what you already do." That's a much better approach, as opposed to just, "I love football. I've done this course. I want to work in football," because unfortunately, there's a massive pool of people like that.
Absolutely. No, again, brilliant insight and brilliant advice from Tom there as well. I think that's a really important message in terms of how you can get involved in football. And obviously, like I say, Tom manages to combine his playing at a decent Sunday level, the second Sunday level, along with his work in football. So great way to stay involved in the game, and obviously a great way with that fantastic advice there from Tom. So all it remains me to say is thank you very much, Tom, for his time today. Really appreciate it, mate. What a legend, and I'm sure you'll enjoy that as much as I did. And thank you for watching. We'll see you again soon.